When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on my wedding day. Facing his utterly despondent expression, I smiled. Main text: my husband, Chinzé, has always been renowned for his integrity and uprightness, a gentleman acknowledged by all, both in court and among the common folk. Our household had neither concubines nor maids of service. Outsiders praised his deep devotion to me, calling me the most fortunate woman in the capital. Yet only I knew the truth: the woman he truly cherished was the empress in the palace. In my past life, I had long accepted this marriage in name only. That changed the year rebels breached the city walls. They seized me and my daughter, Cao Zhao, demanding Chinzé hand over the empress and crown prince. On the battlefield, he drew his bow and shot an arrow through Cao Zhao's body, leaving only these words: "Since ancient times, one cannot have both family and country." That day, my hair turned white overnight. In utter despair, I risked my life to die alongside the empress. When I opened my eyes again, red candles flickered. I had returned to the night of our wedding chamber. Gazing at his face, still as cold as ice, I suddenly curved my lips into a smile. Since their affection ran so deep, I would grant them their wish. Let this tale of profound devotion echo to every corner of the realm. In my past life, when news of Prince Qi's rebellion and the army besieging the imperial city reached me, I immediately dismissed all servants from the mansion. Clutching only Cao Cao's small hand, I fled toward the city gates. Zhao Zhao was only 6, her little face filled with confusion. All the way out, she kept asking me, "Mother, why aren't we waiting for father to come back? Has father forgotten us?" I held her tightly in my arms, my throat tightening. I could only offer a bitter smile. "Your father has more important things to do. He won't be coming back." I hadn't lied to her. News later arrived: the emperor had been slain by Prince Qi, yet Chinzé shielded Empress Meng Han and the crown prince, fighting his way out of the imperial city. From start to finish, he never once remembered that his lawful wife, me, and his daughter Cao Cao, who longed for his return, remained in the mansion. By then, I had given up hope. As his reputation for loyal righteousness and saving his sovereign spread across the land, I was struggling to feed Cao Cao amidst a crowd of refugees, unsure where our next meal would come from. Yet whenever I held her warm little body close, I felt a glimmer of hope. Once we weathered the storm, I would take her to a place where no one knew us, build a quiet life, and never again be entangled in the Qin family's troubles. But heaven does not always grant our wishes. Chinzé later supported the crown prince's ascension, leading the imperial forces to corner Prince Qi. Someone must have told Prince Qi that Chinzé cherished his wife and daughter above all. The prince offered a hefty bounty, and we were forcibly dragged from the refugees. On the city ramparts, Prince Qi pressed his scimitar against Cao Cao's slender neck and roared at Chinzé below, "Chinzé, surrender the empress and the crown prince, or I'll kill your daughter right now." Crouched on the battlements, my fingernails digging into the brick joints, tears mingled with blood as I pleaded with him over and over, "Chinzé, for the sake of our 11 years as childhood sweethearts, for the sake of Cao Cao being your own flesh and blood, save her. I beg you." But he showed not a moment's hesitation. Raising his arm, knocking an arrow, drawing the bow, his movements were as precise as a drill. The arrow sliced through the air, piercing straight through Cao Zhao's chest. Since ancient times, one cannot serve both family and country. His voice rang out with unwavering resolve, echoing across the battlefield like a red-hot blade tearing through my heart. In that battle, he became the hero who saved the realm from peril. With my daughter's blood, he paved his immortal fame and safeguarded the splendid realm of his beloved. The king of Qi did not kill me. Before fleeing, he had me sent back to Chinzé's camp. I understood his intent. He wanted me to be a blade of vengeance, to disrupt the peace between Chinzé and the empress. I had no reason to refuse. In Chinzé's tent, I saw Meng Han clearly for the first time. She was nestled in Chinzé's embrace. When I entered, she made no effort to hide her feelings. Her phoenix-like eyes brimmed with disgust, as if I were some filthy thing. "Your daughter's sacrifice for the state is a blessing beyond measure," she murmured, flicking a beaded hairpin at her temple. Her voice floated like a feather yet stung like needles. "You ought to be grateful, not harbor resentment toward Minister Qin. After all, with your commonplace looks, being allowed to stay by his side day after day is already a tremendous blessing." Watching her lofty demeanor, I suddenly chuckled softly. "Your Majesty, your words sound almost jealous of me? Though I am ordinary, I am Lord Chen's lawful wife, standing by his side openly. Yet you, the esteemed empress, can only meet him in secret chambers like a mouse afraid of the light. Before I could finish, Meng Han abruptly rose from Chenzai's embrace and struck me across the face. A searing pain instantly spread across my cheek, a metallic taste rising in my throat. Still unsatisfied, her long fingernails raked viciously across my cheek, leaving bloody gashes. Wretch! How dare you speak to me like that? You're only alive because I spared you. I was going to let you return to the Qin residence as a mere ornament, but since you don't know your place, you'll go to the compassionate nunnery. To keep vigil over your dead brat. I didn't wait for her to finish. The golden hairpin hidden in my sleeve shot out, plunging viciously into her throat. Blood sprayed across my face, splattering under the red candles, a vivid, blinding crimson. The Empress, who moments ago had been so arrogant, now lay with her face flushed crimson, her eyes fixed on me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Before I could strike again, a powerful force kicked me to the ground. I coughed up blood. Through blurred vision, I saw Chenzai clutching Meng Han tightly to his chest, that face, usually cold and expressionless, now contorted with shock, pain, regret, and fury. Such vivid emotion I had never witnessed before. You poisonous bitch! I'll make sure you burn in hell for eternity. His eyes blazed crimson, his voice thick with venom. But he had no chance. Before coming here, I had already swallowed poison. Now its fury raged within me, my organs burning like fire. Through the haze, I thought I saw Chow Chow running toward me. She still wore that little pink jacket, reaching out her tiny hand and calling, "Mommy, Chow Chow is here. Don't be afraid." My Chow Chow, from birth to death, she was never once held by her father. She always believed it was because she wasn't good enough, that her father didn't love her. To earn Chenzai's attention, she learned to play the zither, play chess, write calligraphy, and paint at a tender age. Her fingertips blistered, scabbed over, and formed new calluses, yet she never received a single word of praise. That day on the city wall, when the arrows flew, Chow Chow was clearly terrified, yet she turned to me with a smile. "Mother, don't cry. Chow Chow isn't afraid." With my last ounce of strength, I reached out toward her. "Good child. Mother is coming to be with you." When I awoke again, the red candles still burned, and the faint scent of wedding wine lingered in the air. The wedding maid lifted my red veil, revealing Chenzai's face, cold as ice. Just like in my past life, he spoke without hesitation, "I'm tired today. I'll rest in the outer chamber." I froze for a moment before realizing I had been reborn, returning to our wedding night. That face before me bore the hatred of 2 lifetimes. Without a second thought, I raised my hand and slapped him. The force was so great my hand went numb. 5 distinct finger marks instantly appeared on Chenzai's cheek. He froze, then seized my wrist, his gaze turning icy. "What are you doing?" I yanked my hand free and gave a cold laugh. "Nothing. Just felt like testing my strength somewhere." He froze even more, his brow knitting tightly. "We've known each other for years. How come I've never heard about this habit of yours?" "There's a lot you haven't heard," I said, picking up the wedding wine from the table and taking a sip, my tone nonchalant. "Didn't my father tell you? I've had this problem since I was a kid. If I don't find someone to stretch my muscles every day, my hands get unbearably itchy. You promised my father you'd take good care of me for the rest of my life. Now, let me hit you a couple of times, consider it repayment." "What's the problem?" Chenzai turned ashen with rage. "Don't you fear I'll divorce you?" I set down the cup and arched an eyebrow. "Go ahead. The whole capital knows you turned down the marriage proposal from the Vice Minister of Personnel's family to wed me. I'm the daughter of your own mentor. Now you want to divorce me? Do you want the whole world to call you ungrateful? Or do you want the censor to charge you with heartless and unprincipled?" He stared at me, choking on his words for a long time before finally managing a single "you." And then fell silent. Watching his flustered, exasperated expression, I felt an immense sense of satisfaction. What he owed me in my past life, what he owed Zhao Zhao, this lifetime, I would reclaim it all, bit by bit. Chenzai married me, after all, simply because my family was easy to manipulate. My father was the Chancellor of the Imperial Academy, a man who devoted his entire life to protecting his only daughter. Gentle-natured, he held little real power. Chinzé, however, was a distant nephew from my mother's side of the family. His life was bitter. His birth mother had an affair and conspired with her lover to kill his father. The clan, disgusted by this scandal and coveting his family's wealth, cast him out. One year, when my father accompanied my mother back to her hometown, he found Chinzé starving and near collapse. Recognizing a certain aptitude for learning in the boy, he brought him back to the capital and arranged for his education. Initially, my father considered taking him in as a son-in-law. But the imperial court had its rules. Even if a son-in-law passed the imperial examinations, he could never hold an official post. Fearing this would hinder his future prospects, father abandoned the idea. Instead, he devoted himself to helping Chinzé, hoping that when he achieved success, he might extend some favor to me. Yet who could have foreseen that he would later become the very person who ruined my life? Chinzé and I were childhood sweethearts, growing up together since we were little. Chinzé possessed striking good looks, clear, handsome features, and was deeply learned. From the moment I could remember, my heart had quietly become his. Yet my father warned me early on to abandon this infatuation. He said Chinzé was no ordinary man confined to shallow waters. He would surely soar to great heights and achieve monumental things. As for me, with my gentle nature and with ordinary talents, if I truly married him, I might not keep pace with his ambitions, and it would hardly be a good match. He only hoped I would marry into a wealthy family, find a loyal and considerate husband, and live a peaceful life. Hearing this, my heart naturally ached, but at that time, my father was already gravely ill, confined to his sickbed. I could not bear to defy his wishes. So I forced myself to suppress my affection and learn to regard Chinzé as a dear elder brother. Subsequent events proved father's words true. Chinzé's journey through the imperial examinations was remarkably smooth. He achieved the rare distinction of topping all 3 levels of the exams, becoming the youngest third-place laureate in our dynasty's history. Overnight fame made him a sought-after figure in the capital. Even high-ranking officials like the Vice Minister of Personnel sent envoys to our family to propose marriage. Father privately inquired about Chinzé's feelings, but before him, Chinzé declared his long-held affection for me and earnestly requested father's permission to marry me. When I heard the news, my heart nearly leapt out of my chest. Overflowing with joy, my mind was filled with thoughts of how I would become a virtuous wife and stand by his side. Yet I never imagined that the man I longed for had never truly cared for me from the start. He merely saw me as a fig leaf to conceal his illicit feelings for the Empress. My family background was ordinary, and both my parents had passed away. I had no brothers to rely on, making me an easy target for him to manipulate and control. I was just 16 when I married him. On our wedding night, he refused to consummate the marriage, claiming I was too young and he couldn't bear to see me suffer. At the time, I believed he truly cherished and valued me, and I gave him my heart without reservation. In daily life, I devoted myself to managing all household affairs, keeping everything in perfect order. To outsiders, we appeared a deeply devoted couple. For 2 years after our marriage, Chinzé maintained strict boundaries, never frequenting places of ill repute. When colleagues invited him to drink with courtesans, he always refused outright, joking that he had a domineering wife at home to keep him in line. Others praised him as a rare example of devotion, and this became a celebrated tale in the capital. Yet only I knew that at home, he was perpetually cold toward me, speaking scarcely a word. Even so, I never suspected anything. I always thought he was just naturally reserved and not good at expressing himself. 2 years passed like this. I turned 18, yet he still showed no intention of consummating our marriage. As a young woman, my birth mother had died early, and my father was gone too. With no one to discuss or ask about such intimate matters, I could only keep them bottled up inside. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, I summoned my courage. Following the advice from those secret handbooks for young ladies, I prepared a simple meal and invited him to drink with me. During the meal, I quietly slipped off some of my clothes and rose to sit in his lap. But he suddenly pushed me away with force, his eyes filled with disgust. He demanded to know where I had learned such frivolous behavior, declaring it repulsive. I still remember the look in his eyes that day, 3 parts contempt, 3 parts disgust, and an unmasked sense of superiority. as if I were some vile, worthless thing in his eyes. Shamed and furious, I stood frozen, unable to react, watching helplessly as he swept his sleeves and left. For a long time afterward, he refused to acknowledge me. Though we lived under the same roof, he treated me as if I were invisible, unwilling to spare me even a glance, as if looking at me would soil his eyes. I was too young then to understand that he was deliberately humiliating me, grinding down my pride, trampling my self-respect, trying to turn me into one of those pitiable women in the inner quarters who only know how to wallow in self-pity and obey his every word. Back then, I was utterly helpless, hiding under my blankets each night to wipe away my tears. Recalling these memories, my anger flared up uncontrollably, and I raised my hand to slap Chinzé again. He seized my wrist, his voice icy as he warned me not to push my luck. "Do you really think I won't lay a hand on you?" I reached out to touch his face, letting out a soft chuckle. "Go ahead. If you dare touch a single hair on my head today, tomorrow I'll spread this story throughout the entire capital, let everyone know that the former third-place scholar in the imperial exams now abuses his own wife. And what's more, I'm the daughter of the benefactor whose hand he once begged to marry. What do you think the imperial court will think of you if they hear this rumor?" Chinzé's eyes blazed with fury, but in the end, he didn't dare to actually strike me. I knew deep down he couldn't risk it. Now that he was determined to climb the ranks by relying on the Empress, his reputation was more important than anything else. Not a single blemish could be allowed. Yet here he was, suddenly lowering himself, feigning deep affection. He even nuzzled my cheek affectionately, his voice soft as he murmured, "Kujin, have you misunderstood me? Or have you been swayed by others' idle gossip? You and I grew up together. You should know that you've always been the only one in my heart. You know how difficult it was for someone of my humble origins to achieve my current position. As husband and wife, we are one, our honor and disgrace are bound together. My whole focus on my career is ultimately to earn you greater respect and honor. Since you are my wife, you should manage the household well, allowing me to serve in the front lines without worry, free from any concerns at home." Chinzé possessed eyes naturally imbued with emotion. When he fixed that intense gaze upon someone, anyone would fall under the illusion that he sees only me. Had the Sukujin of her past life heard these words, she would have willingly endured any torment, be it walking through fire or climbing mountains of blades, for his sake. But alas, the Sukujin of her past life was long dead. Standing before him now was a vengeful spirit, a solitary soul consumed by hatred, yearning to grind his bones to dust and scatter them to the winds. His patience in soothing me stemmed solely from his current predicament, unable to divorce me, yet needing me as his puppet wife to maintain appearances. I stroked his face once more, then turned my hand and struck him across the cheek. With a cold laugh, I said, "What a pity. A vile creature like you, born from your birth mother's illicit affair, dares to speak of loving me?" Chinzé fixed me with a gaze so fierce it seemed he wanted to devour me alive. Yet in the end, he merely gritted his teeth and turned away. Sitting on the edge of the bed draped in crimson wedding quilts, I watched his retreating figure. My mind churned relentlessly with schemes to make him and Meng Han pay, to ensure they met a miserable end. Since they were so deeply devoted, wouldn't it be a waste of their undying passion if their love wasn't broadcast to the entire world, known by everyone? Early the next morning, I rose unusually early. In the kitchen, I simmered a pot of hot congee and prepared a few simple side dishes. Setting them on the table in the main hall, I went to invite Chinzé for breakfast. When he arrived, his eyes were filled with suspicion. He probably couldn't fathom why, after gnashing my teeth in hatred toward him last night, I was suddenly being so attentive today. I rolled my eyes at him coldly. "Eat it or not, but if you refuse today, don't expect another bite of my cooking ever again." Chinzé hesitated, but eventually sat down and picked up a spoon to eat the porridge. Before long, the sleeping potion I'd secretly mixed into the porridge took effect, and he slumped straight back in his chair. I spat lightly at his face, inwardly cursing, a scumbag like him deserves to eat my cooking? If he's got the guts, he can eat it down below. Seeing he was out cold, I hurried to his study and pried open the door lock with a wooden hairpin. After rummaging through the study, I found the portrait of Meng Han hidden in a secret compartment within the wall. In the lower left corner, the words "Beloved Henin" were inscribed in sharp, decisive strokes, undeniably Chinzé's own handwriting. Seeing this portrait again after 2 lifetimes still made my stomach churn. Memories from my previous life flashed through my mind like a kaleidoscope. After Chinzé rejected me that time, I did sink into a deep depression for quite a while. But I'm not the type to dwell on the past, regardless of his reasons for treating me so coldly. Such a marital relationship was never what I wanted. So even though my heart felt like it was being sliced open, I took the initiative to suggest, if he truly had no feelings for me, we might as well part ways and find peace separately. He stared at me for a long moment, then gently tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear. His tone held a hint of surprise. "Why would you think such a thing? Of course I love you." We hadn't consummated our marriage before because I was practicing the teachings of Huanglao, abstaining from carnal affairs. "But if you truly desire it, I will naturally comply with your wishes." That night, we finally consummated our marriage. Yet throughout the entire process, I felt only pain, not a shred of warmth. On the bed, he remained as cold and distant as ever, showing no tenderness whatsoever. After it was over, he merely said he had official business to attend to, then hurriedly rose and left. His manner seemed almost like he was fleeing from something. The cold moonlight spilled across the courtyard. Watching his hasty retreat, my heart felt hollow and barren. After that, he remained distant in this matter, sharing my bed only on fixed days each month. Beyond that, there was no further intimacy. Soon after, I became pregnant and later gave birth to a child. Yet from that day forward, he never touched me again. To outsiders, we remained the model couple, respectful and harmonious. Only I knew that at home, we were like two parallel lines that would never intersect, each living our own separate lives. Subsequent events unfolded just as my father had foretold years ago. Chinzé's official position grew ever more prominent, and we moved into a larger mansion. With the expanded residence came even fewer encounters. Often, we wouldn't see each other for 10 days or even half a month. By then, I had begun to sense something was amiss. Yet, with a child already in my womb, I consoled myself that perhaps this was the lot of most women in the world. I resolved to see him merely as the child's father, believing life could still be endured. My only grievance against him was his utter indifference toward Chow Chow, showing him not the slightest care. I remember when Chow Chow first learned to walk. Once, she spotted Chinzé in the courtyard and wobbled toward him, reaching out for him to pick her up. But after just a few steps, she stumbled and fell, sitting on the ground wailing. Chinzé stood not far away, merely frowning as he watched. From start to finish, he never moved to pick her up. That day, I couldn't hold back any longer and had a huge argument with Chinzé. He turned it around and asked me what more I could possibly want. "You wanted a stable life, I married you and gave you protection. You wanted a child, I gave you Zhao Zhao. You wanted honor, I secured you the title of third-rank noble lady. From being the daughter of the Imperial Academy's chief scholar, you've become a lady whom everyone looks up to when you step out. A person should know when to be content." Hearing his words felt like having a bucket of ice water dumped over my head in the dead of winter, the chill seeping from my scalp to my soles. I'd believed that even if Chinzé didn't love me, he'd at least show me some respect. But I never imagined that in his eyes, everything he'd given me was nothing but charity. I refused to accept such charity and once again demanded a divorce. Yet that very night, as I passed his study, I caught him committing an unspeakable act before a portrait. In that instant, nausea and fury surged within me, and I couldn't tell which emotion burned hotter. I kicked open the study door and snatched the rolled-up scroll from the desk before the occupant could react. The rage pent up in my chest nearly erupted. I wanted to grab Chinzé and demand answers for his inexplicable coldness and distance. But the instant my fingertips touched the silk edge of the scroll and I unfolded a corner, I was struck as if by lightning. The woman in the painting, with her gentle eyes and flowing robes, was none other than the current imperial consort, Meng Han. The icy scroll trembled slightly in my palm. Darkness swirled before my eyes. As the world spun, the long-buried doubts in my heart shattered like a tidal wave. Why had Chinzé insisted on marrying me, a woman of humble origins? And after becoming his wife, why did he remain perpetually cold and distant, never drawing near? And why did the current Empress Xiao, whenever she saw me at court banquets or ceremonies, always find excuses to torment and humiliate me? As a woman of the Qin family, attending court ceremonies during festivals was an unavoidable duty. I still remember my first audience with Empress Xiao. That day, a palace maid presented a jade scepter as a gift. Flustered, I failed to catch it. With a clatter, the gleaming white jade scepter crashed onto the gold-tiled floor, shattering into pieces. The Empress's face darkened instantly. She harshly ordered me to kneel on the stone steps before Fengqing Hall for 3 full hours. Only when Qinzhe hurriedly arrived to plead my case was I permitted to rise. On the carriage ride back, my knees were red and swollen, aching unbearably like leavened buns. Tears welled in my eyes. Yet Qinzhe, seated beside me, merely advised softly, "The Empress is quick-tempered, but her nature is pure and kind. Do not harbor resentment over this." Empress Xiao was notoriously quick-tempered and indulged in extravagant pleasures, drawing considerable criticism from both court and commoners. Yet Qinzhe called her innately kind-hearted? At the time, I found it utterly unbelievable. When I looked up, I caught the faintest hint of a smile playing at the corners of his lips, as if he were in an exceptionally good mood. But that smile vanished as swiftly as a mirage, gone in an instant. I even doubted my own eyes. Only now, holding this painting, did it dawn on me, it was no illusion. Qinzhe was genuinely pleased that the Empress had punished me. In his eyes, her efforts to torment me were proof she'd fallen for him, consumed by jealousy. What possible merit could I possibly have to become a pawn in their game of affection, a tool to be manipulated at will? Horror and fury surged within me. Clutching the scroll, I stormed before him and demanded, "Do you realize that if anyone discovers your actions, it won't just be you and me? The entire Qin family will be dragged down with us, left with nowhere to bury our dead." He merely lifted his gaze, his eyes as cold as ice, his tone utterly unruffled. "Since you know the consequences, shut your mouth and mind your own business." I could bear it no longer and demanded a divorce. I want a divorce. I refuse to have any connection whatsoever with a madman like you. Yet he seemed to hear some laughable jest, a cruel curve lifting his lips. "Divorce is fine. You may leave, but Chow Chow must stay." Moonlight streamed through the window lattice, falling upon his face, usually handsome as jade, yet now making him look like a soul-stealing demon. The look in his eyes made everything click into place. Qinzhe had insisted I bear Chow Chow not out of marital affection, but to use my child as a hostage. As long as Chow Chow remained in his grasp, even knowing his sordid, dark secrets, I'd have no choice but to keep silent, cover for him, and dare not stir. It dawned on me that in my past life, I had never been a real person in their eyes. He and Meng Han were the ones high above, controlling everything, while I was merely the most insignificant ant in the dust, not even worthy of looking up. They chose me to play the role of his devoted wife in this charade, yet they treated it as if they were bestowing some immense favor upon me, as if I were blessed beyond measure. In truth, this lifetime, I had already resigned myself to my fate. As long as Chow Chow could grow up safely, I would endure any humiliation. But they should never, ever have spared even an innocent child. The thought of Chow Chow's fate in the previous life tore at my heart. "My child, your life in the past was bitter enough. This time, Mother will never again bring you into this world to suffer irresponsibly. But those who betrayed and harmed you, Mother will personally send each and every one of them to where they belong, seeking justice for you." I carefully folded Meng Han's miniature portrait and tucked it close to my skin, its texture still palpable beneath my fingertips. I knew that presenting this painting to the prefect of Shentian would ruin Qinzhe's reputation and condemn him to death. Yet such an outcome would be utterly insufficient. Firstly, this portrait alone could never prove Meng Han's guilt. She need only claim ignorance to absolve herself. Given Qinzhe's devotion, he might even take the blame himself, sacrificing his life to protect her reputation. Secondly, letting Qinzhe die would be too lenient. His crimes deserved far harsher punishment. To maximize this portrait's impact, careful planning was essential. Currently, Meng Han held only the rank of imperial consort. The Empress, surnamed Xiao, was the crown prince's birth mother and the eldest legitimate daughter of the Dingbei Marquis. I recalled that in my previous life, barely a year later, the Dingbei Marquis had been branded a traitor. The entire Xiao clan was executed, the crown prince deposed, and Empress Xiao ultimately took her own life in Fengqing Palace. It was precisely then that Meng Han gave birth to a royal son. Seizing the opportunity, she was elevated to Empress, becoming the greatest beneficiary of the Dingbei Marquis affair. Coincidentally, that very case was the first major investigation handled by Qinzhe. To claim there was no foul play, no scheming by him and Meng Han, would be believable to no one. As the saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. To confront Qinzhe and Meng Han, the still powerful Dingbei Marquis household was the strongest ally I could find. I retrieved a heavy silver ingot from the bottom of my dowry chest and summoned the gatehouse servant. I instructed him to deliver an invitation in Qinzhe's name to the Marquis' heir, Xiao Ruffing, inviting him to visit the estate this afternoon. I was certain Xiao Ruffing would accept. Rumors had long circulated that the young Marquis favored male companionship and had coveted Qinzhe for years. Yet Qinzhe, disgusted by his character, had always met him with cold words and scornful glances. Today, I would present this young Master Xiao with a grand gift. I had already had Qinzhe drugged unconscious. Once Xiao Ruffing arrived, this cleansed Qinzhe would be delivered to his bedchamber. This would be my pledge of loyalty to Xiao Ruffing, and the first step in winning his allegiance. I could even picture it. If the Empress consort Ming in the palace heard that the man she longed for had lost his dignity beneath another man, her usually gentle face would twist into such a hideous expression. The scene would be truly spectacular. Xiao Ruffing arrived as promised. When he saw me standing at the manor gate to greet him, his brow furrowed slightly, and a distinct flicker of surprise crossed his eyes. Having lived 2 lifetimes, this was my first time laying eyes on the legendary heir to the Duke of Dingbei. His grandfather and father were both distinguished war heroes who had fought valiantly for the nation. Yet he alone, in the eyes of outsiders, was nothing but a complete wastrel. Originally, the position of heir should have belonged to his elder brother. He was merely the youngest son. But after his brother died in battle, he was forced to inherit the title. Yet he possessed neither the skill to lead troops nor the understanding of court politics. Instead, he excelled at cockfighting, dog racing, and carousing in the streets. Even more outrageous, rumors swirled that he favored male companionship, frequently frequenting pleasure quarters for revelry. In his previous life, he had publicly made lewd remarks toward Qinzhe at a banquet in the crown prince's residence. Later, impeached by a censor, the emperor stripped him of his salary for a year. It was precisely because of this that Qinzhe harbored a deep, seething hatred for him. Later, when Qinzhe presided over the trial of the Marquis of Dingbei's treason case, he sentenced Xiao Ruffing to immediate execution. At the time, some in the streets murmured that this was divine justice, retribution swift and certain, yet none knew how much personal grudge lay hidden behind it. But seeing him today, Xiao Ruffing was utterly unlike what I had imagined. Rumors described him as frivolous in manner, a debauched and dissolute appearance. Yet the man before me, though possessing handsome features, stood tall and slender. Even clad in a simple frost-colored robe, an undeniable, icy aura radiated from him, a faint, almost imperceptible hint of the grim, battle-hardened presence forged on the battlefield. He spoke first, his tone tinged with scrutiny. "Madam Qin invited me here. What might be the matter?" I said nothing, merely turning to push open the study door beside us. Pointing to the unconscious Qinzhe on the couch, I murmured, "Your Highness, please look. I've prepared a grand gift for you." Xiao Ruffing clearly hadn't anticipated the scene. The tea he'd just taken a sip of suddenly choked him, and he began coughing uncontrollably. He glanced at Qinzhe on the bed, then turned to look at me with a complex expression. Without another word, he turned to leave. Seeing this, I hurried forward and grabbed him, using nearly all my strength to stop him. Once held, Xiao Ruffing spun violently, kicking Qinzhe's leg with a flash of savagery in his eyes. "Stop playing dead!" he snarled. "Get up!" I never imagined Qin, the third-place scholar renowned for his integrity, would stoop to such despicable tricks to bring down the Xiao family. He delivered several more kicks, yet Qinzhe on the bed remained utterly unresponsive, not even flinching an eyelid. Watching him from the side, I found myself pondering, this reaction, this sharpness in his eyes, hardly resembled a mere playboy who only indulged in cockfighting and dog racing. A thought suddenly surfaced in my mind. Could it be that all of Xiao Rufeng's previous absurd antics were just an act? Was it to deceive others, or did he have ulterior motives? But if that were the case, what I was about to say might actually resonate with him more easily. I composed myself and addressed Xiao Ruffing slowly, "Your Highness, please do not leave just yet. I have a proposal for cooperation I wish to discuss. Should we succeed, not only would you obtain the person you so desperately desire, but you could also help Her Majesty the Empress bring down consort Meng. This would solidify both the Xiao family's and the Empress's positions. Would this not be a win-win situation for you? At the mention of Empress and consort, Xiao Rufeng's expression shifted instantly. He cut me off sharply. Cease this nonsense. Should such words leak out, we both face ruin. With that, he turned to leave once more. I remained rooted to the spot, my voice calm yet unwavering. Your haste to depart, is it fear that I've struck upon the Xiao family's vulnerability? Within the palace, Consort Ming covets the Empress's throne, plotting in secret beyond measure. Outside the palace, His Majesty has long been wary of the Xiao family's military power, though he's held back for now out of respect for their service to the previous dynasty. The Xiao family may appear to be at the height of their glory, but they're actually walking on thin ice. One misstep could plunge them into eternal ruin. If this weren't the case, why would the crown prince deliberately tarnish his own reputation, pretending to be a dissolute playboy to deceive others? Hearing this, Xiao Rufeng seemed struck at his core. He lunged forward in a single stride, his hand clamping down on my throat with such ferocity it nearly snapped my neck. Gritting his teeth, he snarled, "Do you realize every single word you just uttered is enough to get you killed 800 times over?" Struggling for breath, I still managed to curve my lips into a faint smile. "If your highness doubts my words, why not visit the palace immediately? Search the Empress's chambers and see if there are any objects used for curses hidden beneath the bed. I shall wait here in the study for your highness's return and your answer." Xiao Rufeng stared into my eyes for a long moment, as if weighing the truth in my words. After a brief pause, he suddenly released his grip. Without another word, he turned and hurriedly left the Qin residence. Not long after his departure, Qinzhe stirred on the bed. The moment his eyes opened and fell upon me, he erupted like a madman, cursing and spewing every vile insult imaginable, demanding to know what I truly intended. I approached the bedside, gently stroking his cheek with a flat tone. "Naturally, I intend to trade you for wealth and prestige. Otherwise, what use would you be to me?" Qinzhe was enraged by my words and struggled even more violently. But his limbs were already tightly bound with ropes, and no amount of struggling could free him. Seeing he couldn't break free, he resorted to cursing me in different ways, but no matter how he twisted and turned, it was always the same vulgar language. Where was the refined demeanor of the third-place scholar? Fed up with listening, I simply picked up the bowl of medicine prepared nearby, pried open his mouth, and forced the entire contents down his throat. The potion took effect quickly. Qinzhe's curses gradually grew fainter until he finally fell into a deep, unconscious sleep. The study was at last restored to silence. That evening, Xiao Rufeng returned to the Qin residence as promised, his expression tinged with complexity. The moment he saw me, he pressed urgently, "Who exactly are you? And how did you know about that thing under the Empress's bed?" I lowered my head, feigning hesitation and stammering, I had a very vivid dream recently. In that dream, not only did I meet a tragic end, but the entire Xiao clan was unable to escape. They were executed to the last man, leaving no trace of their remains. I proceeded to recount, in meticulous detail, the tragic fate that had befallen me and the Xiao family in my previous life. I added, "At first, I dismissed the dream as mere fantasy, but today, when I discovered this painting in my husband's study, I realized the dream might have been prophetic." Finishing, I drew a small portrait of Meng Han from my robe and handed it to Xiao Rufeng. He took it, his brow furrowing as suspicion lingered on his face, as if he still thought I was talking nonsense. Yet he sat down on the nearby chair and said in a deep voice, "Even if what you say is true, what is your plan?" As night deepened, an inconspicuous sedan chair followed Xiao Rufeng's carriage, slipping silently into the Dingbei Marquis estate. Inside lay Qinzhe, my husband, ever the dapper, self-important gentleman, once again drugged into unconsciousness. Earlier, Xiao Rufeng had confessed to me that the rumors of his fondness for men were false, merely a ploy to divert attention. Yet he promised me he would find men who genuinely preferred male companionship to entertain Qinzhe, letting him taste the humiliation of losing his dignity and being at others' mercy. Unfortunately, I had other matters to attend to and couldn't personally witness Qinzhe's fate at the Marquis' residence, leaving me with a touch of regret. 2 days after Qinzhe vanished, a servant claiming to be from the Minister of Right's household came looking for him. I recognized him instantly, not a servant of the minister's, but the messenger between Meng Han and Qinzhe in my past life, a lowly eunuch runner from the imperial workshops. After I exposed Chinzai's scandal in my previous existence, he'd stopped hiding his actions from me at home. This very eunuch had delivered messages between Chinzai and Meng Han back then. I feigned ignorance and told him Chinzai had been invited away by Xiao Ruffing. The eunuch grew frantic, his voice cracking. Xiao Ruffing? Don't you know that young Master Xiao has certain inclinations? How could you let young Master Chen go to the Xiao residence? I feigned shock, bursting into tears. How could I know? I only saw young Master Xiao and my husband conversing privately in the study. Then my husband simply followed him away. I begged the eunuch to find a way to save my husband. He hurried off. The moment he turned his back, I wiped away the tears I'd forced from my eyes and smiled. Meng Han, don't you dare disappoint me. I didn't have to wait long before the little eunuch returned. He said he consulted his master, and now there was only one way to save Chinzai. I must go and cause a huge scene at the Xiao residence's gates. I feigned fear and asked, they say the Xiao heir kills without batting an eye. Going to his residence to cause a scene, isn't that courting death? The little eunuch glared at me angrily. Do you even want to save Minister Chen? To save Minister Chen, the only way now is to make this scandalous enough for the whole world to know. Only then can my young master intervene. Besides, you are Minister Chen's wife. His humiliation is your humiliation. If you die for him, isn't that what you should do? Well said, dying for him is only fitting. Meng Han never fails to disappoint me. Sending me to cause a scene at the Xiao residence was likely meant to send me to my death. Ideally, she hoped Xiao Ruffing would slay me with a sword at the Xiao mansion gates. That way, she could eliminate Chinzai's consort while piling more guilt onto Xiao Ruffing through my death. Truly a strategy that kills two birds with one stone. Alas, Meng Han lured me into the trap, unaware that she herself was the one trapped within. Long before Xiao Ruffing abducted Chinzai, we had already laid our plans. That very night, he took Meng Han's miniature portrait to see the emperor. He told the emperor that abducting Chinzai was done entirely for his majesty. Chinzai had committed such a vile act that he deserved death 1,000 times over, yet the emperor could not openly punish him. Thus, Xiao Ruffin devised the scheme, trapping Chinzai in a state of living death. After all, Chinzai's reputation was already ruined, a little more disgrace wouldn't matter. But the emperor's reputation could not be sullied by a petty villain like Chinzai. Xiao Ruffing also told the emperor that the only uncertainty was Meng Han's role in the scandal. If the emperor chose not to investigate Meng Han, he would return to his residence and kill Chinzai immediately, announcing to the world that Chinzai, unable to bear the humiliation, had thrown himself against a pillar and died. If the emperor wished to investigate Meng Han, he also had a scheme to test whether she had been involved with Chinzai. Xiao Ruffing's confession, word for word, was crafted with the emperor's best interests in mind. How could the emperor not be moved? Moreover, he appeared to offer the emperor two choices. But ask yourself, where in this world would a man, knowing his head might be crowned with green, not seek the truth? Especially when that man was an emperor. The emperor would certainly investigate Meng Han. When Meng Han plotted to send me to my death, she didn't know that her every move was already under the emperor's surveillance. Gazing at the young eunuch, I slowly nodded, feigning conviction. You're right. Dying for my husband is worth it. The eunuch departed, satisfied. I smoothed my robes and hurried straight to the Xiao residence. Upon reaching Xiao Rufeng's mansion, I was indeed barred at the gate. Outwardly, I wept and pleaded incessantly, yet inwardly, I was utterly confident, knowing precisely how to proceed next. The Xiao family estate stood in a prominent part of the city, a special grant from the late emperor to General Xiao after the royal army's northern campaign. General Xiao had always been approachable to commoners, so the Xiao residence was perpetually bustling with carriages and crowds. Stumbling back and forth before the gate, I suddenly threw myself onto the stone steps and wailed with every ounce of strength. The Xiao heir acts with utter recklessness. He forcibly reclaims laborers and forces virtuous women into prostitution. My cry drew the attention of the gathered crowd. Wiping away the tears I'd forced out with my handkerchief, I wailed, my husband, Chinzai, was personally selected by His Majesty as a third-class scholar and is a respected editor in the Hanlin Academy. Yet the Xiao family's heir seized him from our home on trumped-up charges and imprisoned him. Under this clear blue sky, my unfortunate husband has been imprisoned for 3 days and nights. I've heard that Zhao's heir devours people whole. By now, my Qinlang must surely have been. Qinlang, I understand. Even if you escape Zhao's estate alive, you'll have no face left to live on. Then I'll join you. I refuse to live. After delivering this dramatic monologue with perfect intonation, I threw myself against the towering stone lion guarding the Zhao residence's entrance. Seizing the moment when no one was watching, I smashed open the blood-filled pouch I'd prepared. Instantly, blood gushed from my forehead. I collapsed unconscious before the Zhao family gate. This dramatic spectacle filled every onlooker with righteous indignation. Even with my eyes closed, I could still hear the crowd cursing Zhao Ruffing in a cacophony of accents. Soon, men sent by Zhao Ruffing arrived to carry me away. After being delivered to the clinic by the Zhao household servants, Zhao Ruffing was indeed waiting for me. He looked at my head and face covered in fake blood and laughed, teasing me for going all out. As I wiped myself down, I reminded him that if you're going to put on a show, you have to go all out. Now it was up to young Master Zhao to make his move. Just as we had planned, the commotion I caused became common knowledge, inevitably drawing the attention of the imperial censor. The very next day, Zhao Ruffing was collectively impeached by the censors. For a time, the entire court was so preoccupied with this matter that they had no time to discuss any other petitions. The emperor flew into a rage and immediately ordered a personal hearing. Zhao Ruffing and Qinzhe were escorted into the palace to face His Majesty, while I, as a key witness, was brought into the Golden Hall. After all this scheming, the grand show was finally about to begin. When I arrived, the interrogation had just started. After just a few days apart, Qinzhe had been tortured into a gaunt, emaciated shadow of his former self. It was a pity Meng Han wasn't here. I would have loved for her to see Qinzhe's state today. He was overcome with emotion upon seeing me, cursing me as a venomous woman, his eyes seething with hatred that seemed ready to devour me alive. Yet I threw myself upon him, weeping, "My husband, what has happened to you?" I even put on an air of being ready to fight Zhao Ruffing to the death. Whoever witnessed this couldn't help but praise my virtuous conduct. Finally, held back by eunuchs, I knelt before the emperor, desperately kowtowing and begging him to vindicate Qinzhe. Zhao Ruffing cried out his innocence, pleading for the censor to withdraw since this was merely the emperor's family affair. But the censor refused to leave, insisting that no matter is trivial for the imperial family. Zhao Ruffing looked at the emperor with a troubled expression, stating firmly that he could not reveal the details of the case unless the censor withdrew. He shot a meaningful glance at Qinzhe, suggesting that perhaps young Master Qin should decide whether the censor should remain present. Qinzhe bowed his head, earnestly pleading for the censor to withdraw. The censor, whether driven by the belief that no matter is trivial for the imperial family or simply relishing the spectacle, remained resolutely unyielding. As the three of them tangled in this standoff, the emperor's expression darkened. Finally, unable to contain himself, he waved his hand and ordered the censor to withdraw first. The censor had no choice but to leave. With his departure, the hall was left with only the emperor, his personal eunuch, Qinzhe, Zhao Ruffing, Empress Zhao, and me. Presumably because the matter involved the imperial harem, Empress Zhao was also present. Zhao Ruffing played his part to the hilt, immediately prostrating himself at the emperor's feet. He shot Qinzhe a greasy glance, implying that while his abduction of Qinzhe was indeed motivated by personal desire, he had coveted Qinzhe's body. Had Qinzhe not committed treasonous acts, not even 800 dares would have made him dare to insult an imperial official. Qinzhe refused to accept this, cursing Zhao Ruffing as a beast and kneeling to beg the emperor for justice. Zhao Ruffing sneered coldly, pulling a small portrait from his robe and flinging it before Qinzhe. "Well then, let compiler Qin explain who this person in the painting truly is." Qinzhe glanced at it, his eyes freezing as if he'd seen his own death. The emperor and empress, likely having seen this portrait before, remained composed. Yet the emperor still displayed the expected fury, snatching the jade scepter beside him and hurling it at Qinzhe, demanding an explanation. The jade scepter struck Qinzhe's head, then bounced to the floor, shattering into pieces. The sound of jade cracking sent a chill through every present soul. Qinzhe bled profusely. Yet he quickly regained his composure, kowtowing to the emperor and declaring he had never seen this painting, that all this was a conspiracy orchestrated by Zhao Ruffing and myself. Before the assembled court, he began recounting how, on the second day of our wedding, I had drugged him into unconsciousness and transported him to Zhao Rufeng's residence. His eyes blazed crimson with fury, his voice trembling with emotion, as if possessed by a demon. He cried out his innocence, begging the emperor to vindicate him and order my execution as a poisonous woman. He failed to notice the gazes of those in the hall, now viewing him as a madman. I feigned heartbroken despair as I looked at him, asking, "Husband, have you lost your mind? I've devoted myself to planning for you, how could you treat me this way? Even if you seek to escape blame, you mustn't slander me like this." I too threw myself to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably before the emperor. "Your Majesty, Chinzé and I grew up together. The whole neighborhood knows I've adored him since childhood. Whenever we had anything special at home, he was the first to receive it. To let him study without worry, we never made him lift a finger around the house. Marrying him was the blessing I'd longed for day and night. How could I possibly bind him and throw him into another's bed on our second night as husband and wife? Especially when that another is a man? My husband is the most upright man. Prince Xiao must have driven him mad, causing him to speak such nonsense here. Your Majesty, you must vindicate this humble woman." I feigned accusations against Xiao Ruffing. Xiao Ruffing sneered coldly, "Are you a fool? Your beloved husband is trying to kill you, and you still have the nerve to slander me?" I wept and wailed, appearing utterly distraught. Empress Xiao gently reminded me to reveal everything I knew, assuring me she and the emperor would see justice done. Staring at Empress Xiao, I blurted out like a simpleton, "But I already told you everything. What else is there to say?" I knew well that the more foolish I appeared now, the more the emperor would trust me. Empress Xiao was pleased with my improvisation, her eyes crinkling with amusement. "Simply recount how Rufeng came to your home, and how he took Qin Bianchuan away from there, tell it truthfully." I paused before speaking slowly. "Your humble servant is foolish. I've only been married to the Qin family for 3 or 4 days. Let me begin with our wedding night. That night, my husband did not consummate our marriage with me. Instead, he retired alone to his study. I was both worried and afraid, unsure why I had not won my husband's affection. I tossed and turned all night, unable to sleep. Early the next morning, I prepared breakfast and went to the study to call my husband to eat. But I found him. He was. I feigned embarrassment and indignation, adopting an expression of difficulty in speaking. Though I did not state it explicitly, everyone in the hall understood my meaning. The looks they cast at Chinzé were filled with contempt. Chinzé's face turned as red as a pig's liver, his chest heaving. "You venomous woman! You're slandering me!" I prostrated myself forward twice more, declaring every word was true. If even half a word was false, may the thunder god strike me dead. After all, Chinzé had done such things right before my eyes in his previous life, and who knows how many times in private. Even the gods would judge me truthful. Furious and impotent, Chinzé spewed a torrent of slanderous filth at me. I wept uncontrollably, unable to speak further. A eunuch promptly gagged Chinzé's mouth. Like a lamb led to slaughter, Chinzé could only emit muffled whimpers. The emperor motioned for me to continue. Stammering, I said, "I do not know who the person in this painting is, but such an incident occurred on my wedding night. My heart is truly heavy. Coincidentally, that very day, my husband sent an invitation to Prince Xiao, inviting him to our residence. Assuming Prince Xiao was my husband's friend, I secretly showed him the miniature portrait. My intention was to ask Prince Xiao to persuade my husband. I even thought, if my husband truly liked it, I could decide to bring it into the household. What if we became sisters-in-law together?" Unexpectedly, Prince Xiao's face turned pale the moment he saw the portrait. He hastily put it away and went to find my husband. The result? My husband was taken to Prince Xiao's residence and hasn't returned for days. Coincidentally, the young servant from the minister's household, who was close to my husband, came looking for him at our residence. I told the servant about the situation. The servant then informed me that Prince Xiao. He has a taste for men. He urged me to make a grand scene at the Xiao residence to demand my husband's return. Prince Xiao wouldn't dare refuse. What happened next, everyone already knows. As my words ended, the room fell silent, broken only by Chinzé's frantic moans. I bowed my head repeatedly before the emperor, like a wife whose sole concern was her husband's safety. A stinging pain shot through my forehead, it must already be swollen. Yet a wave of satisfaction washed over me, for I knew each prostration was a death knell for Chinzé. Weeping as I bowed, I pleaded, "Your Majesty, I do not know which woman that painting depicts. But my husband's affection for a woman surely does not warrant death. Prince Xiao has so deeply dishonored him, I beg you, Your Majesty, to vindicate this humble woman." My words flowed with heartfelt emotion and logical coherence. By comparison, Chinzé's defense seemed feeble and futile. The emperor's gaze upon Chinzé was already that of one looking upon a corpse. At that very moment, Meng Han was brought before the throne. After 2 lifetimes, I saw Meng Han once more. Hatred seethed within me, yet I could only clench my fists tightly, using the pain to remind myself to remain composed. Whether in my past life or this one, Meng Han had always been deeply favored by the emperor. To bring her down, I could not afford a single misstep. She knelt to pay her respects to the emperor. He stared at her, not allowing her to rise. It was Empress Xiao who spoke softly, "Rise. There is no other matter. We discovered a portrait of the imperial consort at Qin Bianzhuan's residence, so we invited the consort to identify it. This portrait is so exquisitely detailed, could it be from the consort's private collection?" Meng Han glanced at the small portrait on the ground and immediately knelt gracefully at the emperor's feet. "Your Majesty, this servant." I didn't give her a chance to utter a word of defense. The moment she lifted her head, I feigned seeing her for the first time, my eyes widening in terror as I pointed at her, too shocked to speak. Then, disregarding the presence of the emperor and empress, I knelt and crawled toward Chinzé, landing several sharp slaps across his face. You fool! How dare you covet the imperial consort? If you covet her, why did you marry me? You bastard! This is treason. You can die alone, but dragging me down with you? I'll fight you to the death." I pounded Chinzé relentlessly, drowning Meng Han's pleas in my fury. Chinzé had already realized the situation was hopeless the moment Meng Han entered. He gritted his teeth, enduring my blows and insults without uttering a sound. By the time the eunuch pulled me away, Meng Han had missed her best chance to defend herself. Kneeling at the emperor's feet, her face slightly raised, tears welled in her eyes, brimming with sorrow. She looked utterly pitiful. Alas, the emperor's gaze was now entirely fixed on me, not sparing her a single glance. I began kowtowing to the emperor once more, "Your Majesty, this humble maiden has been married to this beast for but 3 days. His deeds are not my doing. If you intend to execute his entire clan, might I first be granted permission to divorce him?" My sobbing, snot and tears streaming, made me look like a ridiculous clown. But it did lighten the heavy atmosphere in the hall. Meng Han's tears had been shed in vain. Xiao Ruffing chuckled at the right moment, "Your Majesty, just grant her wish. She looks terribly pitiful." The emperor waved his hand impatiently. "Rise. Stop crying. Your tears give me a headache." This meant he had pardoned me. Overjoyed, I hastily kowtowed in gratitude. Only then did the emperor turn to Meng Han. "Explain yourself. What is the story behind this painting? As the saying goes, the first charge is full of vigor, the second loses steam, and the third is spent." After my earlier interruption, Meng Han's pitiful expression was no longer as flawless as before. Now, she could only offer a dry explanation. "The figure in the painting does bear a 7/10 resemblance to this humble servant. However, this painting was neither painted by me, nor was it given by me." "What, exactly, does your Majesty wish me to explain?" Unsurprisingly, she was preparing to sacrifice Chinzé. Gazing at Chinzé kneeling in the hall, I wondered, was his heart being torn apart by betrayal from his beloved? Or was he finding solace in sacrificing himself for her? Either outcome pleased me. Meng Han continued her tearful performance, weeping ever more pitifully before the emperor. "Your Majesty, I know not what others have said or done, but to condemn me based solely on a small portrait is utterly unjust. If His Majesty claims Lord Qin has confessed to an illicit affair with me, then I beseech you to release him and grant us the chance to confront each other." Silence fell over the hall, broken only by Meng Han's mournful voice. "Since marrying your Majesty at 15, not a single day has passed without my heart belonging to you, without my thoughts turning to you, without my longing for your presence. Though I may be willful at times, if you doubt the sincerity of my devotion, I beg you, grant me death to prove my innocence." As she spoke, Meng Han lifted her head, gazing at the emperor with hurt eyes. Pearls of tears welled up in her eyes. This image of a weeping pear blossom would have captured the emperor's heart in the past. But now, the emperor merely scrutinized Meng Han, saying nothing. With no response, Meng Han rose from the floor, preparing to throw herself against the stone pillar of the hall. As she was about to strike the pillar and end her life, the emperor finally ordered the eunuch beside him, "Quickly, stop the imperial consort." Meng Han breathed a sigh of relief, kneeling to bow. "Thank you, your majesty, for trusting this humble servant." The emperor regarded her coldly. "I shall grant you one more chance to reveal the truth. Or you may choose to confront Qinzhe." Meng Han finally spared Qinzhe a glance, seemingly certain he would sacrifice himself for her. Without hesitation, she chose to confront him. The cloth covering Qinzhe's mouth was finally removed. Qinzhe did not disappoint Meng Han. He first fixed his gaze steadily on her for a moment, then immediately began banging his head against the ground. "Your Majesty is wise." This guilty subject, Qinzhe, was bewitched and dared to covet consort Meng. "I deserve death 1,000 times." But consort Meng truly knew nothing of the sinner's vile intentions. To spare others from guilt, this sinner offers his life as atonement. Ah! Qinzhe, don't love too deeply. Hearing Qinzhe take sole responsibility, Meng Han breathed a sigh of relief. She crawled to the emperor's feet. "Your Majesty, you heard it yourself. I am innocent. This must be a trap set by someone using Minister Qin to frame me. You must vindicate me." The emperor kicked her away with one foot. "You vile woman. Still trying to sweet-talk your way out at this point? Do you take me for a fool?" The kick was brutal. Meng Han coughed up blood, about to cry out in protest. But when her gaze fell upon the bloodied figure dragged in by the guards, all words died in her throat. That bloodied figure was none other than the young eunuch who had delivered her message that day. His feet had been severed, and he lay barely alive, not a single inch of his body spared. Before the emperor, he could only mutter one plea: "Your Majesty, spare my life. I only boarded the Empress Dowager's ship of doom because I stumbled upon her affair with Minister Qin. She threatened my family's lives, forcing me to run errands and deliver messages for her and Minister Qin. I had no choice. I beg only for a swift death." The emperor waved his hand, and the eunuch was dragged away. Only now did fear truly flicker in Meng Han's eyes. Her face ashen, she threw herself desperately at the emperor. "This must be the empress's slander. Because your Majesty cherishes me, she has long sought to eliminate me. Do not be deceived by her outwardly virtuous facade." Disappointment deepened in the emperor's eyes. He kicked her down again. "Wretch! Even with irrefutable evidence, you still dare to lie and slander the empress. Your crime is compounded. Guards, take this vile woman away. I shall make her suffer 1,000-fold humiliation." Seeing all hope lost, Meng Han screamed as if clutching at a last straw. "Your Majesty, Qinzhe coerced me. He stole my personal handkerchief and threatened me. If I refused his advances, he would ruin my reputation. I had no choice. Your Majesty, did you not say you loved me most? I will serve you daily from now on. I beg you, spare my wretched life." Meng Han proved herself a woman of great resolve, capable of bending and stretching as needed, a display that surprised everyone present. Qinzhe, however, looked as though he didn't recognize Meng Han at all, his face ashen. "Your Majesty, how could you speak such words? It was you who seduced me, Your Majesty. You even said the emperor was old and greasy, that he disgusted you every time. You claimed that if you could be intimate with me just once, you would die content. You are the empress I would die to protect. How could you treat me this way?" This dogfight between the two was more thrilling than I could have imagined. Qinzhe was gagged and dragged away, lest he utter any more treacherous words. Meng Han cursed him incessantly, calling him a fool. She must have been blind to have ever fancied him. The emperor was so enraged he fainted, screaming before losing consciousness, "I shall have this adulterous pair torn limb from limb." The rest of the story, I heard from Xiao Ruffing. Meng Han was executed by Ling Qi, the emperor fulfilling his vow to have her torn to pieces. However, the official palace announcement declared that Consort Meng had died suddenly from an incurable illness. Qinzhe, naturally, was also dead. In official accounts, he had thrown himself against a pillar, unable to bear Xiao Rufeng's humiliation, a death deemed honorable. The reality, however, was that the emperor had bestowed him upon Xiao Rufeng, where he was taken in turn by several burly men each day. Only thus could the emperor's hatred be appeased. Xiao Rufeng, having forced the death of the Hanlin Academy compiler, was publicly flogged 100 times by the emperor. Naturally, this beating was merely for show. To outsiders, it appeared brutal, flesh-torn, blood flowing freely, a terrifying spectacle. But in truth, when I went to visit Qinzhe at the Xiao residence 7 days later, Xiao Rufeng was already walking with a spring in his step. Yes, I went to visit Qinzhe. He was chained by his hands and feet within a cage, his home for the rest of his days. Upon seeing me, he cursed me first, then demanded, why? I told him I'd had a dream. I recounted every detail of my past life, piece by piece. I told him that originally, he was meant to trample over my blood and that of my child to elevate his beloved to the highest position. But now, he could only remain in this cage, waiting day after day for the favor of the emperor. This was the ending I had carefully chosen for him. As for me, thanks to the mercy of the emperor and empress, after arranging Qinzhe's funeral, I was sent to the grasslands of the frontier. The place was my choice. In my previous life, my daughter Chao Zhao once said the frontier was where she most longed to go. She had read the verse, a lone column of smoke rises straight into the vast desert sky, the setting sun hangs round and full over the endless river. Yet she spent her days at home learning music and painting, never venturing far. I promised her then that after her 7th birthday, I would petition her father for a journey to see the outside world. Yet my Chao Chao never reached her 7th year. Chao Chao, in this life, your mother will go to the frontier for you. Day after day, I will watch the setting sun, night after night, I will admire the desert. If you can forgive your mother, please be my daughter again in the next life. The story ends here. Thank you all for your company. See you in the next chapter.